All right, news topic one. I feel weird doing this after, I haven't done this for a while because it's usually Rich, but
You're doing well though.
it's Spider-Man 2 is out right now. Sorry, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. We got to be correct on that, It's out, and I thought it would be interesting to discuss some thoughts on what you guys, what are your thoughts on what you've seen thus far, how the launch is looking, and just general like feelings on it. Because we got our tech video out earlier this week, even though it was limited to, I guess, 20 minutes of new footage or so. It did make an appearance on the channel. We're going to have more Spider-Man content on the way. Oliver's got a comparison video in the works. And I got an interview with Mike from Insomniac, who is the tech director at their, at Insomniac in general. So that should be really interesting. Look for that when it comes up. But gentlemen, I assume neither of you have actually had a chance to play the game yet. Is that right?
No, I haven't. I've been wholly plugged into every screenshot and video you've been sending me, John, though. And I guess my first impressions are that I'm very happy that Insomniac took the time to make a kind of ray tracing only title, which has been pretty rare this generation. Usually a lot of these games have fallbacks for a performance mode. And in their case, given the fact that they achieved a ray tracing performance mode in every single game they've released so far this generation, them carrying it through to the final product in this one, and then getting rid of the non-ray tracing mode, because at that point in time it was kind of redundant, maybe other than like a slightly higher resolution in some areas and things like that. I'm very happy to see that, because it's kind of what we at the channel have always been really wanting for this generation of consoles, as well as just for the industry in general, to move away from classical techniques and move on to finally, 2018, Turing comes out, real-time ray tracing is here. We're finally at the point where games are shipping with ray tracing only. And that made me really happy to see, actually.
Yeah, and
I personally think they're too lazy to put in a turn ray tracing off button.
Well,
That's definitely it.
It's so important to me to turn that ray tracing off if I want to.
Don't speak sacrilege here. You're in the house of ray tracing.
There's a excuse me, Oliver. There's a TAA subreddit. There definitely has to be a ray tracing subreddit, right?
There must be.
Yeah, that's true.
I personally am very excited about the game, and I have massive superhero sort of burnout. I hate the stuff. I can't stand it anymore. But they're so creative, and Insomniac. I've been a fan of their games and their approach to everything since the very beginning. Ever since they sort of collaborated on, remember when Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank were sharing the same engine? It all started from there, really, for me really, really falling in love with their work. And also they've always made tech delightful. They've used it always in a delightful way. Their stuff never feels like a tech demo. The stuff always feels,
built
joyful
with purpose,
and super well crafted. I love their work. And also we shouldn't forget that there's a Hellboy game that came out this week as well.
Wait, what?
I know it's exactly. Yes, you're all surprised, but it came out this week. I think today, which is kind of bad timing, I would say, for them. But
that is bad timing.
But I hear it's a great game. I just wanted to slip that in there.
That's a good slip in.
There was also a King Kong game out this week, which is perhaps less of a great game. We might have to look at that at some point.
We may actually have to, John.
I'm very excited. Can you turn ray tracing off on King Kong?
I don't think King Kong has ray tracing at all.
Okay.
I'm afraid.
Oh my God, John, we should do a dual playthrough of me playing 2005 King Kong and you playing the new King Kong and comparing.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Beyond that, I think one of the things that Insomniac has really done well this generation is, and I still remain kind of baffled by how efficient they are, but this is like their fourth shipping PS. Wait, is it fourth? This is their fourth shipping. Fourth. If you count Spider-Man Remastered, they've basically shipped
a PSVR game somewhere in
there.
No,
I don't think they've done. They have not done a PSVR 2 game, but they've shipped, multiple PS5 SKUs at this point. Obviously Spider-Man Remastered and Miles Morales, and then there was Ratchet and Clank, and now there's this. and that's within 3 years. Well, obviously there would have been development time prior to the release, naturally, but I think
Right.
that's a pretty impressive accomplishment, right, Alex? I mean, it's like, uh, it also kind of, I think, shows the benefits of working with your own in-house technology, right? They have a staff that's very intimately familiar with every aspect of the development pipeline for making these types of games.
Yeah, it does remind me. It actually, the output cycle does remind me a bit more of like a PS2 era kind of studio, where, you know, if you read back in time and about any of the larger, semi-larger, even AA studios at the time, they had multiple projects working at the same time, and they actually released. It wasn't like a 5 to 6 year long project and one of them was canceled midway through or something like that, which is the typical thing nowadays. Or it comes out and it's I don't know, it's a extraction shooter. So I'm really happy to see them. Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to brag, but I released 3 games this year.
Well, there you go.
Wait, really? 3 this year?
Yeah, The Last Worker
yeah.
in March.
That's true.
On every bloody system in the world, pretty much. Then in March as well, Skew on Playdate.
Oh, right. Skew.
Oh, Playdate. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, with a game with Frédéric Renal, with the creator of Alone in the Dark. We were I think we pretty much still are the only proper real-time 3D game on Playdate. And you should do a tech analysis of that one. The frame rates are butter smooth as well.
I need to figure out how to capture
How do you even
Playdate.
capture Playdate?
It must be possible.
Oh, and then C-Smash,
Of course.
VRS on PlayStation VR 2. So even Insomniac hasn't made a PSVR 2 game. So
which is a shame because if you guys recall, Insomniac actually did dabble in the VR space early on, right? They made
they did.
multiple, I think, games. There was that. Dang it sounds like
thinking
sort
of
of
Song of the
island
Deep?
hopping thing with a robot kind of thing.
yeah. There's
wasn't it?
that. There was the thing with Magic that has a name that reminds me of Forspoken, but it's not Forspoken. And Forspoken has forever ruined my vocabulary. around
Yeah,
these
it's
things.
vocabulary. You can't even think of any whimsical fantasy
But
names anymore.
yeah, so Insomniac did actually have they do have a track record of making VR games for the PC, no less. But I guess they've kind of jumped ship from that, and I can see why. They're obviously their output on for normal console games is really, really impressive and kind of central.
Do you remember their first person shooter on PlayStation 1 that
Disruptor.
What was it called? Like Disruptor.
Yes,
Oh, that was so good.
I
Disruptor
think John
is
even
actually
mentioned
great.
it in what video? Did you mention it in your Doom video in one of the clone section?
I've mentioned it at some point for sure, but it's genuinely a great shooter that they did back on PlayStation, and it's known for having a buttery smooth frame rate, which is unusual for that era, right? So it's an impressive game. They did that before Spyro. I don't think it was a huge success, but it's a cool game, and it even has FMV cutscenes. Which, where's the FMV in Spider-Man 2? Like, come on.
Did they actually use any to hide anything in the game? Because I can't even recall if the first
No.
game has FMVs. I don't think so.
From playing through the game, I'm pretty sure every single scene in Spider-Man 2 is real time. So that they don't do transitional stuff. And that actually brings me to another kind of point is like, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Alex, is the loading stuff, right? Like they're obviously,
yeah.
So there was bits of the fast travel video going around, and conceptually it's nothing new. People were actually highlighting a Drivers San Francisco, I think it was, which was a really cool game. The Crew also does this feature, and that's Reflections. I don't know if they're actually related, but either way, we've seen this sort of zooming in and out of the map before, and I actually thought it was interesting because, and it was the same with Ratchet's Portals, where you saw stuff like Titanfall 2 do similar things. We've seen stuff on PlayStation 2 use the same approach, but I think there's more to this to explain why it's this sort of thing can scale conceptually. So it doesn't take away from what they're doing in Spider-Man 2 so much as just highlight some of the differences there in terms of how much data is being moved around, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we don't have like internal metrics or anything like that. We don't know unless Mike handed them off to us secretly under the table when you interviewed him. But like the basic concept is that obviously you've seen quick transitions in games before in the past John's talked about a number of them on the channel before. It's a big PS2 thing. Titanfall 2, you can do it in levels. There's an episode, there's an area in Dishonored 2 where it does it at the exact same time. You can switch between two worlds. And the basic concept in those games, usually, because they were targeting previous generation consoles primarily, is that you would have to have whatever you're going to be displaying soon enough. Nearly all of it already has to be in system memory. And on a console like the PlayStation 5, there's a limited amount of system memory. So you either spend all your resources making what your scene looks really great in front of you, using the memory for that, or you would have to split up that memory and hold two scenes in the same time. The entire purpose of having a fast storage solution like the SSD and the custom I/O stuff in the PlayStation 5 is to make it so that you can keep a higher level of fidelity everywhere in the world and do somewhat quick transitions to them. Obviously, they're not the same level of instantaneous as hitting like the button in Titanfall 2 to change a thing, but the whole point is that you can get there quickly and have high levels of fidelity, which is something that people on the internet tend to miss out on. I think it's the fidelity. That's the difference.
Exactly. And, like you mentioned, Titanfall 2 is a case where I would imagine they sort of keep those two scenes resonant in memory as you're going through, right? So you're basically simultaneously juggling those two scenes. So they're able to instantly switch because of how they built that. They purpose built it that way. And it works super well. It's actually, I would say, I wonder if the old there's some games that would allow you to swap between old and new graphics, like the Halo Anniversary titles.
They do that.
It's actually kind of a similar concept to that in a way, where know you're keeping such and such data in memory so you can quickly bounce back and forth without any issues. And that they actually do some, there'll be more in the interview, but they actually do a little bit of this obviously in Spider-Man with like animations. Like he was mentioning how the animation data for the game is gigantic this time around. There's so much animation data. Keeping all that in memory is difficult. But because the player can do any number of these actions at any time, they kind of need to be ready for it. So they keep like sort of like a decimated version or like a reduced memory footprint version of every single possible animation, like ready in memory at any point. And then basically if you hit into it, it can quickly fetch the rest of that data. So it's never in a place where it'll stall completely, Right. So there's a lot of clever memory management stuff going on as well to kind of keep all this stuff fluid. And
another example too is you did show off in your video that there was portals in the game. You can see the other world on the other edge of those portals. Presuming they're not just like a cube map or something like that, those things that you can see always in a game have to be in memory too. Exactly. So like in that aspect is another aspect where they're doing something like the Titanfall 2 thing, but it's just like a portal to another area that you can.
Yeah, I'd assume like while that scene begins, the stuff loads up in the background, and then by the time you actually hit the portal, it's already like ready to go, and then you just launch right into it. So cool stuff. But yeah, I'll be interested to see more on it. We'll have more comparisons coming up from Oliver, like I said, kind of showing how it compares the different modes. Let's actually take some questions here from the patrons on Spider-Man 2. I keep saying just Spider-Man 2, and so do they, but it's Marvel Spider-Man 2. I wonder if they get in trouble internally at the studio if they leave out the Marvels part, Marvel apostrophe S. Let's just pretend it's here in the question. So this one comes from Ishrek Subhan, who says, "Hey John, with Insomniac's impressive implementation of ray tracing features in Spider-Man 2, do you think this bodes well for the longevity of the PlayStation 5 and pushes back any calls for an enhanced or quote-unquote pro console refresh in the future?"
Well, he didn't say Marvel's Spider-Man 2, so you might be talking about a different game.
He's talking about that.
The Activision one.
Activision. Yeah, I was about to say.
I don't think the Activision one has ray tracing though, so maybe it's just a typo.
I worked on that one. I was a Treyarch at the time.
Hold on. So I got to pivot here for a second. You worked on that Spider-Man 2?
Well, I did a bit of translation help on that.
Oh,
one,
okay.
I was working on the utterly garbage Minority Report game.
The Xbox one, GameCube one.
Oh, that one. Yeah. I remember that Minority Report. Yeah. Everybody runs.
Everybody did.
Everybody ran
from the game.
Yes, they sure did.
Anyway, sorry to distract from the question.
That is an interesting factoid. All right, Alex, what do you think about this? Actually,
I think So if you are an enthusiast who is very interested in getting the best you can out of a console, and you liked things like PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, then actually you can actually see in Spider-Man already where, I mean, when Oliver puts out his video detailing the differences between the performance mode and the visual quality mode at 30 FPS, you will see differences between them, both in resolution and other settings. And if you could imagine if a PS5 Pro were not CPU limited, it would actually be a great way to push, for example, with double the GPU power, a quality mode up to roughly 60 FPS. And so, or depending upon, we don't know anything a whole lot about the PS5 Pro yet, but if it does actually do anything different and it's not just straight RDNA 3, then they do something like, I don't know, have machine learning upscaling,
Right.
or if they have ray traversal unit, or anything that is just not straight RDNA. Let's be honest with you. Like then they could maybe push that ray tracing in new directions. With we already know internally that the engine supports ray traced ambient occlusion and it supports ray traced shadows. If you think about it, in this, even actually, first of all, really funny thing is that if you look at Spider-Man, the first game and the second game actually have ray traced shadows in them. Did you notice them? Well, maybe you didn't, because they have them in the reflections. That's how you do visibility and reflections usually, is you actually cast a shadow ray. Mm-hmm. So they can just port that over to the main world rendering, which they've already done for the PC versions of these games and like Ratchet and Clank. You can already see areas where they could push those visuals further in a way that is, it would benefit the graphical presentation. Right. I don't know about a 60 FPS or not, because we don't know anything about the CPU of the PS5 Pro yet. But I think if you're someone who's really interested in the idea of a pro console, I can look at Spider-Man 2 and already see areas where it could be improved.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned the shadows, because that was also a feature of the interior rendering, which those are ray traced interiors, right? And to get those shadows being perfect like that, they are ray traced. They're not using shadow maps there. So that is potential for a future thing. But actually, I want to mention that Insomniac's kind of like among the best in terms of using RT on console thus far. Their solution is performant and it looks good. But I do think we're already seeing sort of the limits of these machines pushed a little bit with some of these early Unreal Engine 5 games. And this could change, because UE4 was also not very performant initially last gen either, right? But like Tom, for instance, is looking at Lords of the Fallen. And it drops on Series S to like what, 324p? It's like 576 by 324, which is like sub PlayStation 2 resolutions now.
Yeah, and also like the PS5 and Xbox Series X also dropped to sub 720p.
Sub 720p. And
the 60 FPS mode though.
In the 60 FPS mode. So like we're already seeing, like, to get there with this new engine and this new technology, major sacrifices are being made to image quality. Like we're back down to levels that I'm honestly surprised to see again. And the reconstruction technologies like FSR2, for instance, they're not really capable of handling such a low pixel count, I would say. So as a result, I do think, and I didn't think this a year or two ago, but I'm starting to believe that, a pro console would be potentially useful. Just based on what we're seeing right now with the UE5 stuff and low resolutions in plenty of other games lately. I just think Insomniac, they make very specific choices for their game that allows for a very clean image and smooth performance while still featuring ray tracing. But like you said, Alex, with the pro console, maybe they could push that. Maybe they have a quality mode that's 60 FPS and then like a performance mode that goes for 120 or something. Like if the CPU were up to the task, mind you. But
And yet the sales of the Switch are going up in Japan this year. That thing hasn't been updated for a while. So
there's a giant split in the market. Yeah.
But I think people are waiting for the new Switch, and based on the rumors, it could actually be rather potent as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually curious to see if they can hit the ground running with that and continue to leverage the success of the original Switch into a new model. Because Nintendo has traditionally struggled with these generational leaps, right? It doesn't always hit for them. So we'll find out.
Well, they're taking their time this time, I think, compared to other periods.
I kind of don't blame them, given their success, right? And they've had a lot of change in leadership during this period as well. So, but anyway, another question here from Zephyr. He says, "Hi DF team. I was really surprised when I learned that Spider-Man 2 requires that ray tracing is enabled. As far as I know, this is the first AAA game to do so. When this game inevitably gets ported to the PC, do you think they'll keep this requirement? Is this a signal that ray trace only will soon become the norm?" Alex?
Not the first AAA game to do it.
That's right.
You've got
Metro.
Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition is the first. In fact, I'm pretty sure I start the video with those exact same words. I did on it.
Is there another one? I mean, technically the UE5 stuff could be considered.
A lot of the UE5 stuff is, even though it'll drop back to software mode, but the requirements for the GPU are still so high that it's almost like we're doing it. And also you've got, I guess, technically Portal RTX Remastered and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's all ray tracing only. But I would imagine, the PC version would probably be ray tracing only. It'd be pretty weird at that. It's going to probably come out in 2 years from now, based on the current cadence. That would be 2025. That would be 7 years after the launch of real-time ray tracing. Dude, if you don't have a GPU that can do it by then, that means you bought your GPU either in 2019 with AMD or like 2016 with NVIDIA. Like, I don't know. Like, every 6 years you should probably get a new GPU. Like,
well, speaking of that, Dark Rod 99, which is a great name, by the way, also says, "This question is more for Alex, but given how well Spider-Man 2 scales in all modes with RT enabled, does this bring excitement for the PC port coming? And what type of improvements do you expect to see on PC?"
Wow. It scales a lot like the first game did. So I imagine what they'll do, like in Spider-Man, the first game, which they didn't do for Ratchet and Clank, which always disappointed me, is that they'll make the ray tracing quality higher, like a way they make it cheaper for consoles because there's like a limited ray budget and how many different triangles it can touch. They like reduce the quality of the world and the reflections. So like that would be something they already enhanced for the first game. They should probably do it for the second game. Among other things I could see them doing, they'll probably have ray trace shadows and ray trace ambient occlusion, and who knows what else they'll put in. It's Nixies. They're a very high quality team if they give enough time to work on the games, hopefully. So yeah, I expect great things.